What's going on, guys? My name is WOLFWILL, and today we're going to take a look of what Dark Spyro could potentially be like in Spyro 4 and or future Spyro games set in the classic universe. Before we get started, if you guys are new to the channel and you like what you see, be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to keep updated with all of my future uploads. With that out of the way, let's get right to it. So, a big majority of people in the Spyro and the Crash community all know that there have been a lot of leaks and rumors recently of the designs for Dark Spyro and the OG Spyro in Crash on the Run for the upcoming Season 3, I believe it is. Now, I believe that the two characters are going to be in the game, of course. I haven't played it personally myself, but this gives me the idea to talk about what would Dark Spyro be like in a future game such as Spyro 4 or perhaps another sequel. And of course, if you guys remember from my last video where I talked about my hopes and ideas, which by the way, you guys absolutely smashed it, which I do appreciate, thank you very much. I did talk about a little bit of Dark Spyro. It was more of a skin. I don't remember if I specifically talked about him as like a character being introduced, although I think I did because I talked about it alongside Cinder, Flame, Ember, Red, all those characters. But what I want to talk about is what could he be like in regards to, say, personality and how he could be implemented into the story in particular. So I'm going to take this moment to start off by basically comparing the two Spyros in regards to the OG Spyro and the Legend of Spyro version, essentially. So if we look at the classic one that we all knew at first, he's very courageous, he's headstrong, he's eager, but he has a bit of arrogance as well. We've seen this especially in the first game, particularly where he's just wanted to just get in there and go for Nasty Nork rather than trying to take some of the advice that some of the elders gave him, and he's just sort of just wanting to get in there, essentially. Basically, he's got a bit of a cocky attitude, essentially, with a fiery personality, but if you compare this to the version that we see in the Legend of Spyro trilogy, that Spyro is a lot more mature and serious, where he sort of lacks that arrogance and cockiness, and also showed more willingness to actually correct his past mistakes. So the two of them have those differences, but both of them in general wish to be heroic and be there for their friends as often as they can be. So they have those similarities, but you can clearly see those two differences. So this is what's going to help sort of compare what we could see with Dark Spyro in a future game in the classic universe. So now if we look at Dark Spyro in the Legend of Spyro trilogy, which we first saw him in 2007's The Eternal Night, he basically possesses a split personality where during the first bit of transforming into Dark Spyro, he sort of had control over his actions. This is Spyro in regards to controlling the actions of Dark Spyro, where obviously you end up fighting Gol at the end, so that's the final boss fight of the game. However, towards the end of the fight, as we know, he sort of became a bit more aggressive and ruthless, essentially. He practically turned Gol into stone and shattered him to multiple pieces, so that was a bit of a ruthless act, obviously. And basically, he was going to be a ruthless dragon. However, it was because of emotions that he was able to turn back into his normal state, being Spyro. So basically, the Dark Spyro in this universe is more of a split personality. He's a part of Spyro. However, I kind of see this a little bit differently in the classic universe, where Dark Spyro could actually be a separate being entirely. Like, there could be two different Spyros in the same universe. So, the way I see how Dark Spyro could be in regards to personality is One key thing would be he would definitely be a good troublemaker. That's kind of what I see. The reason why is because we look at Spyro in the games, like the classic ones, and obviously, as I mentioned, he's a bit of a cocky and arrogant type of dragon, pretty eager to get into it. But if you think about Bianca in Year of the Dragon, kind of with some of her actions in like the first part of the game, it's kind of like a bit of a mischievous troublemaker type of approach, which is kind of what I see with Dark Spyro in this case. He could be the troublemaker of this universe. Not like the top one, but that's definitely part of his personality. But another key thing I could definitely see with him is he could have a drive to try and be more superior than the original counterpart, being obviously OG Spyro. So he's gonna want to prove that he is better than him in every way possible. That goes with the whole troublemaker sort of part of his personality. Which also leads into the fact that he probably would be a little bit more cockier than Spyro, obviously. Which then also leads into potentially not really having much of a sense on how his actions could potentially affect others. So he's kind of like the bully, essentially. In like, if you look at like a high school teenager movie, for example, where you have like a high school jock who's trying to prove that they're better than the main protagonist. It's kind of like that sort of style in a sense. Not a high school movie, obviously. Just ignore that. Anyway, but one other thing that I think would be really cool to see, obviously, is the fact that obviously, yes, he would have his own allegiance with characters like Red, who I spoke about in the previous video, who could potentially be the villain introduced, because you would then introduce Flame and Ember as other characters as well. But something I would absolutely love to see that I think would be really funny too, would be that Dark Spyro could have a feud, like a rivalry with Ripto. The reason why is because we all know Ripto hates dragons. Ripto's also one of the more popular villains of the OG Spyro games, and seeing Ripto have his rivalry with Dark Spyro would be pretty funny to see, especially if you had Red there too, who's trying to sort of control the two overall. So that kind of could work. And I remember some comments in my previous video mentioned how they could bring Nasty Nork and Ripto back, which I could definitely see that happening. And there was also a Nasty Nork design in Crash on the Run as it was, where he actually has a better body physique, like it actually sort of makes more sense. And I kind of like this design more than what we got in 2018's Reignited Trilogy, but everyone's got their own opinion, obviously, so yeah. Overall, Dark Spyro could essentially be basically the equal to the OG Spyro. Both of them are going to be very even with one another, but they both have their differences and sort of different tactics in regards to how to beat the other, essentially. So it would be a pretty cool feud to see. I think it could definitely work in a future game, potentially Spyro 4, if we could say introduce Red, perhaps bring Ripto back, essentially, or perhaps just a sequel after that as it is. I guess we'll have to find out for sure. Of course, though, at some point we will find out if obviously there is going to be like a official title for Spyro 4, if it's actually going to be coming out at some point, because we all know it's going to happen. I mean, Crash 4 happened, and the fact that there was a little Spyro Easter egg in, I believe it was the concept art book for Crash 4. It was like Spyro underneath some cars or something, I think it was. The picture will be up on screen now for you guys to see anyway. But especially since Spyro is coming to Crash on the Run, we literally know it's gonna happen. It's like Spyro 4 is gonna happen. But time will tell when we'll finally find out like what it's gonna be called, who can be the villain and so forth. But I think having Red would be a great villain to have, especially bringing in all these characters, which could potentially include Dark Spyro, especially with the multiverse concepts that I talked about in the previous video as well. Because after all, Ratchet and Clank are about to go in this direction with Rift Apart, and then of course, Crash already went through this with Crash 4 It's About Time, so yeah. But with that, thank you guys so much for watching once again, and as always, I hope you guys have a good day, and I will see you in the next one.